Hello, thank you for your interest in Vision 2025, Riley County's comprehensive plan for the future. I am Monty Weedle, Director of Planning and Development for the county, here to provide you with more detail about the goal of the plan and the regulatory tools adopted to implement the plan. Let's begin with a look at the major goal of the plan as determined by the Vision 2025 Committee, a representative cross-section of Riley County citizens. The primary objective of the Vision 2025 plan is to preserve the county's most highly productive and unfragmented croplands and grasslands by directing the majority of future non-agricultural residences to 3 designated growth areas: the urban area surrounding the city of Manhattan, growth areas around each of the small cities of Leonardville, Ogden, Randolph, and Riley, and a low to medium density residential area along Tuttle Creek Reservoir. The remainder of the future non-agricultural residences are directed to appropriate areas by use of the Development Guidance System, which balances 4 elements. First, how the proposed development conforms to the goals, objectives, and policies of the Vision 2025 plan. How the proposed development conforms to the future land use section of the plan. The Land Evaluation Site Assessment or LESA score. This scoring system is outlined in the Vision 2025 plan. And the hardship on the applicant based on the applicant's explanation of that hardship. What may be considered hardship is also outlined in the Vision 2025 plan. The LESA element is a 7,000-point scoring system that balances 7 factors: character of the neighborhood, the zoning and uses of nearby property, the suitability of the site for agricultural production, the impact on nearby property, the impact on public health and safety, the public cost-benefit, and conformance to the comprehensive plan. A score is calculated and a particular development is placed into one of 4 categories using the final scoring chart: strong for development, moderate for development, moderate for preservation, or strong for preservation. As you can see, the higher the score, the greater the site's suitability for development. On May 21, 2012, the Board of County Commissioners adopted changes to Riley County's zoning and subdivision regulations to implement the recommendations outlined in the Vision 2025 plan. These changes were titled the Vision 2025 Amendments. Let me explain the major changes. The first major change involved the insertion of a section into the regulations that specified how agricultural exemptions were to be determined. Under Kansas law, agricultural uses are exempt from zoning regulations, but the law does not specifically define agricultural uses. The new section not only defined agricultural uses, but clearly outlined under what circumstances exemptions would be granted. The first situation is when agricultural land is conveyed strictly for the purpose of continuing an agricultural activity and no residence is proposed to be constructed on the property. The second situation is when a residence is proposed. For the residence to be considered exempt, 3 criteria must be satisfied. First, a significant agricultural operation must exist or be planned for the property or nearby property that would warrant the construction of a residence to support the operation. The site must be at least 3 acres in size to meet sanitary code requirements, and the applicant must be engaged in the agricultural operation as specified in the regulations. Finally, the regulations also outline the criteria whereby an additional residence may be constructed on the site for a family member or farmhand that is also determined to be engaged in agriculture. The most fundamental change to the regulations was the creation of a new zoning category termed the AG Agricultural District, which replaced the former G1 General Agricultural District. Of course, the main purpose of this change was to implement Vision 2025 by creating a new agricultural district that was fundamentally different from the old district by eliminating the 20-acre minimum lot size requirement and creating some new, flexible zoning options. The new district also included a new use table and use-specific standards for certain uses. Instead of the old 20-acre minimum lot size, this new district has no minimum lot size requirement. Instead, the regulations focus on the residence to be constructed. If the residence is determined to be agricultural, as I previously explained, it is exempt from the regulations and a permit may be issued for the construction. If the residence does not qualify as an agricultural residence, several flexible zoning options may be available, provided the standards outlined in the regulations are satisfied. There are also certain situations where a residence may be constructed under the grandfathering rules. A new requirement within the Vision 2025 amendments is the agricultural protection easement. The purpose of this requirement is to protect existing and future agricultural uses from the threat of nuisance lawsuits from non-agricultural property owners desiring to live in the country amidst agricultural operations that may produce odor, dust, smoke, and other annoyances that can travel through the air across nearby properties. The regulation requires new non-agricultural residential property owners to dedicate an easement to all agricultural producers within 1 mile of the property. The easement is for the use of the airspace to allow dust, odor, noise, smoke, etc. to cross over the property. The easement requires communication with the surrounding producers to understand what activities are currently in place and what might be present in the future. The easement continues with the residential property regardless of ownership. However, the easement will not exempt industrial-scale agricultural uses from the threat of a nuisance lawsuit. The flexible zoning options incorporated into the regulations that I mentioned earlier are termed residential use designators. The designators must be approved by the Riley County Planning Board but do not require rezoning from the AG district. There are 4 different designator options, and I will now describe each one. The first is what is known as the extraneous farmstead designator, and is meant for a situation where an agricultural producer desires to sell a no longer needed farmhouse and outbuildings to a non-agricultural resident. The site should be the minimum needed to include the various outbuildings without including productive agricultural land. The site must be the minimum needed to comply with the sanitary code. The site must be platted, which is a formalized survey approved by the Planning Board and Board of County Commissioners and filed with the Register of Deeds. An agricultural protection easement must also be filed with the plat. The remaining unplatted land must stay in agricultural use and does not have to be platted and or rezoned. This designator is limited to 1 per original parent tract, which is the tract as it existed on May 21, 2012. The second option is termed a reconversion lot designator. The intent of this option is to allow persons who originally purchased 20 acres or more for the purpose of constructing a residence, who may not have wanted that many acres but did so because of the county's requirements, to sell off a large portion of the acreage and go down to a smaller residence lot. An example size site would be 2 to 5 acres. Whatever size meets the desires of the owner and complies with the requirements of the sanitary code. The site must also be platted, and an agricultural protection easement must be granted and filed. The remainder of the tract must be returned to agricultural use and does not have to be platted or rezoned. This designator is limited to 1 per original parent tract. The Vision 2025 Committee recognized that there are many tracts of land throughout the county that may be suitable for a home site simply because the tract is isolated from other agricultural land and is therefore inefficient to crop or graze. The isolated home site is another flexible residential use designator within the AG district. The site must be platted and must be of sufficient size to conform to the sanitary code requirements. A site plan is also required in order to ensure that tree cover or other site attributes remain in order to maintain the isolation from other agricultural land. An agricultural protection easement is required to be filed. All remaining land within the larger tract must continue in agricultural use and does not have to be platted or rezoned. Unlike the other designators, this option allows a cluster development, meaning multiple houses in a single location, to occur as the number of isolated home sites are limited to one residence per each 40 acres of original parent tract. The final type of residential designator is titled the country estate. The purpose of this option is to allow larger residential sites for persons that may want horses or more space to accommodate hobby farming or other similar uses. To qualify, the site must be at least 20 acres in size, but is not required to be platted. To ensure compatibility, the site cannot be located within close proximity to a confined animal feeding operation, must not be located within the Noise Zone 2 around Fort Riley, shall not score strong for preservation under the LESA system, and should be located in areas where other similar-sized home site tracts occur. The country estate requires a site plan and an agricultural protection easement. The remainder of the parent tract is not platted or rezoned, and only one country estate is allowed per original parent tract. Another fundamental difference with the new AG district was the creation of a table of permitted uses. This was the format of the previous regulations, which organized uses in list form, as indicated here. The format of the new regulations utilizes a table that illustrates for any particular use whether or not it is a permitted, conditional, or special use in either the general AG district or within one of the residential use designator lots. It also identifies whether or not there are use-specific standards associated with any particular use. The new AG district allows many new uses that were either not permitted previously or were not well defined within the old regulations. Here is a list of some of these uses. Some of the most notable uses that were non-existent previously are small-scale business, accessory apartments, and secondary dwellings. A completely new section within the new regulations is the use-specific standards. To give you an idea of how these work, you can see here a segment of the standards relating to accessory apartments. So in order for an accessory apartment to be allowed within the AG district, all of these standards would have to be met. Although not all uses have use-specific standards, if listed, the standards must be satisfied before that particular use would be permitted. Another change that was critical to the success of the new regulations was the rules regarding nonconformities, commonly referred to as the grandfathering rules. Because the minimum lot size requirement in the AG district was eliminated, it was very important to decide how pre-existing tracts would be handled in terms of whether or not a residence would be permitted to be constructed on them. Because there were so many existing tracts of 20 acres or larger within Riley County, the decision was made to focus on the desire to construct a residence and whether or not that residence was agricultural in nature. If so, it is exempt from regulation as stated previously. But what about non-agricultural property owners that may have purchased a 20-acre parcel with the intent of constructing a residence? To protect those individuals, all tracts created by deed between July 10, 1980, the effective date of the adoption of the 20-acre requirement, and May 21, 2012, the effective date of the Vision 2025 amendments, were grandfathered so as to allow those individuals to construct a residence as originally intended. Other small tracts may also be allowed a residence if grandfathered under previous regulations. The development guidance system mentioned previously was originally only within the Vision 2025 Comprehensive Plan. With the Vision 2025 amendments, the Development Guidance System became a new standalone document that is now referenced in the new regulations. By referencing it in the regulations, it ensures that the system will continue to be used as it was intended. By having it as a standalone document outside of the zoning regulations, it may easily be modified by the Riley County Planning Board and Board of County Commissioners so that it remains functioning as originally intended. The new regulations also established a new section entitled Site Plan Review. This new section outlines the requirements for site plans for two types of designator lots: for sites that require riparian or agricultural buffer, and for all conditional use requests. The final new section is termed Development Standards, which includes riparian buffers and agricultural buffers on certain developments. The riparian buffer is required for all new development along any stream that is of sufficient size. The setbacks and types of uses permitted within two different riparian zones vary depending on the order of the stream. Stream order is simply determined by the number of tributaries encountered. This section also describes uses that are restricted or prohibited within riparian zones. The agricultural buffer is based on the assumption that the best type of buffer to prevent negative effects from agricultural dust, odor, noise, etc. is distance. Therefore, the minimum setback for your residence or structures intended for animal habitation is 200 feet from all property lines adjoining an existing agricultural operation. This setback may be reduced to no less than 50 feet if adequate physical separation already exists or will be constructed as determined by the Planning Board. This requirement applies to all new non-agricultural residential or commercial uses. This is a final summary of all of the changes in regulation created by the adoption of the Vision 2025 amendments. If you have any further questions regarding these regulations in general, or how they might apply in a specific location or situation, please contact our staff at the Riley County Planning and Development Department. Our phone number is 785-537-6332. We are here to assist you in any way that we can. Thanks for your interest in Vision 2025 and the future of Riley County.